Hello everyone, thank you so much for supporting this video. I'm here in Tuscany on my vacation and decide to record a video on how to paint the eye. Let's start. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a gray tone, slightly wipe it off so it's not gonna be contaminating my painting. I'm gonna take a little bit of medium transparent red oxide and then just think about where the placement of the eye will be. Of course, this is not a portrait, this is just painting detail, so it doesn't have a very crucial placement. It would be nice to have the eye placed so it's not too big, it's not too small, it's not too much down or up. So what I started with is bottom line of the eyebrow, stretching, tilting up, and then turning sideways. And then the upper line, kind of mimicking the same thing. And then right now, without too much paint, leaving just marking where the eyebrow will be. Now, from the beginning of our eyebrow, I will make a diagonal line and find my tear duct point. I will also make another line on the narrowest passage where the curve of the eye starts, and then this somewhere will be my eye that I will need to find. So if the tear duct is here, I can draw a diagonal line with a tilt and find my other end of the eye. And then from a tear duct, what I'd like to find is the highest point of the eye. And I think it might be here, and then it will curve down. So it's tear duct, curving up, then curving down. The eyeball that is in view, and then marking the tear duct here, the opening, making a straight line here, and then bringing the eye around that spherical shape, the lower eyelid. And that will be my lower eyelid. And then the upper eyelid, I'm just gonna measure in my mind, not using a brush or anything, but just come and use the distance, and then of course adjust my curve if I need to, if it became a little bit too big, and adjust, then come and adjust my eyebrow line that got a little bit too low. So I will erase this and bring it up. And everything is always adjustable, especially in such early stage of the painting. So nothing is carved into the stone. And so then I'm just gonna place a little color for my iris. That's about all that I need to start painting that eye. Bring this a little bit further, flatten out here, come to the corner, go down. And as we're developing the painting, the drawing will find itself. So yes, I don't want to be more concrete than this. I think this size will be good. And here we'll find the articulation of this eye. Okay, so two things I'd like to mention before we start. As we all know, the eyeball is round. So if you imagine an orange, and if you would cut a little opening in the skin like this, you can see how the skin of the orange is really describing the roundness of the orange, which is very similar to how the lower and upper eyelid act for the eyeball. They are tightly clinging to it. Now, the tear duct is actually rests outside of that ball. So it doesn't lay on the top of the round ball. So that's why here we have a straight plane and then the curving begins. And then here it's more of a curve to begin with because it's coming to the point here. Just like the skin of orange will have a thickness, the skin of lower and upper eyelid has a thickness. And depending on your view, you will see the thickness on the bottom most often. And then sometimes you will see the thickness of the eyelid on the side and side here. The upper eyelid always crosses over the lower eyelid. They never come to the point like this. And the other thing to remember that if this is a sphere and the sphere is shaded this way with the light coming this way, then this part of the eye will be in shadow while this part of the eye will be in light. As well as there is a little cast shadow from the upper eyelid on the eyeball. So you'll have a little bit of a shadow right next to eyelash, but you'll have a right hand side of that sphere is in shadow, and that's what you're gonna see. Iris of the eye is never around with a touching sides. You see that eye is often hidden by one or the other eyelid, depending on where the eye is looking at. The quality of the eyeball is semi-translucent and the lens on the iris is transparent. So the way the light will act with a transparent object is very different than the light acting on the top of the skin of the eyelids. So the light will leave a highlight, then go through it and exit at the back of the eye. We'll talk about it more concrete. So this is just a couple things to pay attention to as you painting. But what I'd like to do is start a little bit on the wild side. Just as an experiment, I'll take my terra rosa, yellow ochre, and a little bit of raw umber, just to darken this slightly. And then I simply, let me try it. No, that's too dark, but let me just try to take a little bit of color in here and connect it all, a little color in here, just connect all of this like this. And even the tear duct I'll connect and a little bit of an eyeball. And then I'm going to start painting, picking the brush that fits the size of my brush stroke. I'm gonna take the same color, mix a little bit of white in it, a little bit of yellow ochre, even more yellow ochre, and paint. That's too much white, so take more yellow ochre. That's better. Okay, and just bring it here and paint. Maybe take a little bit of alizarin and raw umber with transparent red oxide, looking at something a little bit darker maybe. Yeah, don't take too much alizarin, it will be too cool. Okay, and just paint the whole area as one. The whole area as one. If you feel that your brush strokes are too small, then you have to increase the size of your brush. I'm gonna come back and paint a little shadow here, a little shadow here. I'm gonna come back and paint a little bit more cadmium red with alizarin for my tear dark. And then I'm gonna take just yellow ochre with white and gray, and again yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, deep, bring it to this. Then I'm gonna take a little bit of gray, bring it into the eye, paint, and then at the end put more. Okay. Then I'm gonna take raw umber with transparent red oxide and just bring the darkness. And as I'm bringing that shape in now, with a little bit more consciousness of its curvature and how far it goes, I'm looking at my negative spaces here. And with the same color, I'm gonna just pass it and pass a little bit to this side and maybe slightly curve it this way. Then add a little bit of red to it and release less dark and softer edge, softer upper edge. Always improving my drawing. Moving this down as I realize I need to adjust the shape. I must agree with you, it's looking at this point pretty bad. So the question is, can we pull it through? And we just started it. We have to be okay with not being perfect. I think we always try to do the best, but we can't set the expectations too high from the beginning, otherwise we're setting ourselves for failure. Okay, so there is a system to that madness, so let's just not worry about it. And what I'd like you to do is mix a little bit of warmer pink, but very light, to the same value as the eyeball, and allow that pink just come and paint the space below. So, like this. And we're gonna take a little bit more yellow ochre, add it to that value, and paint the top of there. But careful not to go too much down because you're only painting the light. And then we're gonna take a little bit more alizarin, put it in that color, and we're gonna paint the top where the pupil is. Here, just the top. And then we're gonna take a little bit of raw umber with transparent red oxide, and we just bring a definition. Very likely not a lot of darkness, and especially at the edge of the And then I'm gonna take a soft brush. This is gonna be a bit of experiment. I'm gonna just blur that a little bit. Now we're gonna get a little bit more serious. I'm changing for a bigger brush, and I'm gonna come back to all my shapes. Raw umber, yellow ochre, and terra rosa. And then paint that's too green. One brush stroke will tell me. And then just paint into it the curvature of that eye. Okay. And I'm gonna paint a little bit of that in here as well. I don't know why it came out darker, but that's okay. Okay, so we'll make this a little bit darker. And then we're gonna take a bit more gray into the white, and we're gonna just allow a little bit more opening to that eye. Openness, take a little more yellow. Paint. Okay. And then take a little bit more cat red, mix into it, and paint the tear dark and enter that color into the eyeball. So right now, no definition. And then take a little bit of our shadow, raw umber, and then paint that negative space of eyeball that is in shadow right now. Okay. Good, good, good. We continue our journey into discovering yellow ochre, more white, a little bit of phthalo green, and I'm gonna put it on the top of the eyebrow as a light, and I'm gonna cut through and come out a little bit to the top of that turning plane. So I think the key is in the beginning to keep very general and to also keep just big color spots without getting specific. At some point, we will get specific. So don't worry, that time is coming. So still working two colors, yellow ochre and terra rosa, putting more light, a little more color on the top of their eyebrow. Painting through, painting more color, painting around the structure of the eyeball. This I can definitely bring a little bit more violet and separate my, even a little bit of phthalo green, and separate my lower eyelid by just having a temperature change and maybe even a little bit of value change. The lower eyelid doesn't get as much color as the upper eyelid. So partly because it's more shallow, partly because it's not under the eyebrow, which is like an umbrella or a roof, shades it from a light, and partly because the cheekbone reflects so much light back into the lower eyelid. Okay, so that's our big shapes, and then this coming out. Okay, division. All right, so let's talk about some of the color changes we can make. We can make this a little bit more warmer and redder, because ultimately what I want is an open edge from the tear duct to this lower eyelid plane. I also want to have an open edge from tear duct to the eyeball, and that's why I'm bringing out some of the pink. After the pink comes a little bit of yellow coloration in the eyeball. And after yellow coloration comes more of a blue, greenish, violet coloration of the eyeball itself. So this is where just before the iris, it gets a little bit cooler, a little bit more difference in color than its surroundings. Okay. And then behind the iris, there is a more shadowy part of the eyeball, since the light is coming from the top corner. And so I'll paint a little bit more in the shadow, but then I'll make some changes to it. Because iris is a focal point of the eye, what we want to do is to concentrate the most contrast, the most color change, the brightest highlight, and the sharpest edges around this area. That means we need to relax some of the other edges. So there is a bit of a cast shadow from the top roof of this upper eyelid into the eyeball. Notice that I'm using more of a warmer color, not an eyelash color. And I'm gonna try to make it a little bit softer. So if my edge came out too hard, you can soften it mechanically. And also you can adjust by allowing some of the values next to it get a little bit darker in the teardrop. So get the tear dark, look a little bit less lit up first. Don't put too much color in the tear dark. So that's how we're gonna relax this edge. Now, as the edge of the eyelash comes towards the pupil, the edge can become sharper. So we can put a little bit more darkness here. And maybe just a little bit more darkness right at the beginning of this. So we almost have a game of now you see it, now you see less of it. And when we come to the bottom plane, we're gonna see almost nothing at all. No division. That's our goal. We're gonna tilt the eyelash line a little bit more, getting a little bit more specific. Here, I don't paint as a line, I just make a softer brush strokes, lifting up my brush. Then I'm gonna take phthalo blue with a raw umber, which is gonna create a really dark, cool, let me see, no, it's too cool, so I do need to add the transparent red oxide, but I'm gonna increase the darkness right under, and that's where my pupil will be. A bit more warm added to it. I'm gonna just start of darker right here and connect that to the iris and a little bit of the darker here. So this whole upper area is in shadow of the. Now, before we'll get much further, let's bring an exciting part of the highlight. Remember that the lens is rounded, so my highlight will not just sit straight, it will sit on top of the curve. So here I'm curving that as well. Okay. Making a little adjustments. My first attempt to make a highlight always has more color to it, and I choose to do violet. You can choose to do more of the phthalo blue or ultramarine blue, and on the top of it a second passage of yellow white. Now that is too much yellow. Usually I do that, but then my third passage will just be more white inside of that yellow. Oh, my hand moved. Okay. Now I'm gonna go back to my darkness and I'm gonna just shape it and take the extra out. Okay, let's leave that. I can take a little bit of phthalo with white and create, no, that's too much white. I need more color. This is very common for my practice, is to paint this more than once, so I'm actually not gonna put a pressure on myself to be perfect from the beginning, I'm trying, definitely always trying. And then with more yellow ochre and even cadmium yellow and a little bit of terra rosa, I'm gonna come and paint translucent light. Now that's too orange, so I'm gonna add a little bit of phthalo green into it and see if I can induce this light into my iris, if I can bring a little bit more color. Now, one thing I try to always remember, that it doesn't take a lot of color for the eye to become colorful. So, and I also try to think that the eye sits inside of the eye socket. If I put too much color, too much value change, and so forth, then what's going to happen is that eye is going to jump out of its setting. So I have to go a little bit slow first. I can always punch some of it again. And so here I'm putting a little bit more light for the reason that what I need to do is I would need to allow that eye to bleed in to the eyeball. The softer I'll make that edge, the more realistic this eye will be. So this is very important, and I'm learning this myself because for a long time I tried to make my eyes look more defined than they really need to. So right now, for example, I'm taking a little bit more purple. It's just the wrong brush that I'm using. So I'll take a little softer brush and I'm gonna try to bring a little bit more gray purple. You can do ultramarine, just not too much color, and allow just really close next to the eye a little bit of that grayish color. And then taking greenish color more, I'm gonna infuse it into the eyeball again. So the edge becomes softer and softer and softer. The edge between pupil, the edge between iris, the less edge you can see, the more realistic the eye will look. And that brings me to another point, is if we want to see less edge there, one of the tools you have is to take your attention from that edge by focusing the eye on another edge. So, for example, if I now take more light, I just want to figure out what is it that I want to use. Maybe some cadmium red light, a little bit of yellow, and I'll bring your attention to this highlight. Take a little bit of shorter paint that doesn't have a lot of oil in it, and so it would feel more sticky, more appropriate for highlight and thickening the quality of paint. Bringing highlight here, and you'll probably think, oh my God, that's too much. I'm thinking the same thing. I think I overdid it, but what I usually do is I allow myself to overdo, and then I'll bring it back. And I find this way is more successful than underdo, because I never quite get as high as I need to do if I go incrementally, if I just do a little at a time. Let's leave that highlight for now this way, even though it still might be too much, but we can always push that back. But what I'd like to do is take a little bit of alizarin into my transparent red oxide, and now when I have my highlight, I want to define slightly that crease of the eye. Don't be surprised if you hear Italian speech outside of my window. I love Italian language. I don't know if you can hear it or not. I can. Okay, so that crease, except that we never want anything in the paint look like it's a line. So right away, I'm going to connect it into the shadow right here. And later on, if I do need to darken a little bit of it, which I feel I would need to, right here. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. And then I'll take yellow ochre, and in that yellow ochre, I'll mix a little bit of my green and red. So always kind of staying with the same coloration. And then I'll bring, no, that's too much red. Bring more light, still too much red. One more try. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of cadmium into it. Keep wanting to lighten. Okay, that's better. Changing this to more yellowish coloration to enter that shadow. And because this is a form edge, we want this to look very soft. So I just soften it, and I'm gonna keep adding more light on the top of it. Just trying to okay, more light to the other side so it's connected. And again, I'm gonna take a little bit of maybe pink and connect that to my curving shape that is tucking in and creating that little roof over the eye. We really, as a humans, built in such perfection that everything is thought through and has a purpose. So this is making our eye protected from the elements of sun and dirt and wind, softening that more. Okay. And then we can come back to the eyebrow and now just do more definition to it. Find the corner. That corner is where the plane changes from frontal to the side to the temple. The end of the eyebrow is never as dark because simply there is just fewer hair on it and the light is able to pass through it. The top edge, this edge of the eyebrow, is also much softer. You see the hair coming this way, so it softens. And the darkest dark on the eyebrow always lands itself here on the bone of the structure, eye socket. So there will be the darkest dark of your eyebrow. Okay. And then let's come back, and since we are painting the light, we'll bring a little bit more light right here. We'll bring a little bit more light down right here and start decreasing, warming up that light as it goes down the heel and becomes more shadow. There is another piece of light that catches itself here. Not too bright, but a little bit. Maybe I'll need to adjust that later, because what I want to do is allow this to be one value, and the thickness of that is also needs to be shown. And then with a little bit of cadmium red into white and yellow, we can bring a wet quality to our tear dark, like this. Then lose the edge here. Then bring a little definition of division. Little dark corner here, okay, but still very much softer edge, and not say too much here. Keep it quiet. And then comes a very interesting part of the painting where I want to leave a lot of it without the edge. So I'm gonna put a little edge here, and then I'm gonna take white and some of the cadmium red light and yellow, and I'm gonna put a highlight on the edge. So I want to leave a little space here, and the edge will be here, and that highlight will not be solid because there is a eyelashes growing from it. So it's an interrupted highlight. Okay. And then with a little bit more red, I'm gonna take more thickness, just get a little thickness here, and then bring a warmer red to the corner of the eye. Okay, without becoming too much like a line. And then here with a little bit of alizarin, very small highlight coming up, change of the plane. Again, try to do that. Not too much, but something like that. And then with a little bit more greenish coloration, yellow ochreish coloration, take this to just very gentle change and make the corner a little bit darker, while maybe one of the eyelashes curving here. So here you see more of the length of the eyelashes, and here the weight of this is pressing a little bit closer, so this could be just a little bit more first defined. And then come in. Let's bring a bit more warmth in the shadow of that corner. And then we're gonna bring a little bit more warmth in the corner here. And then we're gonna bring a little bit more yellow light on the bottom of this as a reflective light with a little bit more warmth where the highlight is, just very small pieces of paint, nothing linear, no lines, just little brush strokes to highlight that highlight by making a little bit of a darknesses. Bringing a little bit more yellow into the green. And allowing this light also bring more light on the bottom of the eye without coming too close to iris or creating an edges. Just that. A little bit more yellow in. So as you're adding anything, you really think about not creating edges. If you need to paint through, did you notice how I went slightly away from the edge? And if I'm putting anything, a brighter color, I'm gonna stay away from the iris, and even maybe take my skewer and mix this in. Yes, that's better. And then take a little bit of green with more violet and put just a tiny bit of color in here, just a little bit. And we're gonna take a little bit of yellow green and put a little bit more right to the light. Again, away from this. Okay, the yellow and the green helps to integrate this because the eye itself has green color. So if we were to paint blue eye, I think you might want to use a little bit more blue coloration to reach that. Okay, I think that's good. That's coming along well. So for me, I really put the intention for painting today is to create softness. So, and that I feel is a good intention. Every time you painting an eye is to really move towards less definition, more softness, for more organic, more realistic, and more emotional eye. So it doesn't feel that it's drawn, but feels more as it's just breathing in. And notice how I'm just adjusting some of the shapes by curving them and moving the paint. And so that's why it's important to paint with a little more paint, so you have something that can be adjusted. If the highlight feels too strong, we can tap it out or take it away and then come back to and reestablish a better relationship of the highlight. Raising this tear duct a little bit first. Okay, like that. Keeping this space in front of it looking a little bit flatter, and then this space lowering down a little bit more shadowy. Yeah, again, always trying to integrate the line into the volume by changing the linear quality into more of a triangular shape, and also playing with the edge. So there is a variation of the edges in the shapes, but there is none when it's just a line. So softer, harder. Okay, let's then just make it a little bit more fun of the painting. Now let's play adding a little bit more color, maybe more violet, a bit more yellow green here. We just try and see what happens. Here will come a little more light, yeah, from the corner of the nose coming in. Maybe the same light will come on the top of their eyebrow. Maybe a little bit more color. warmer color coming closer. But that's, I guess, already painting away from the eye, which is very tempting. But I guess it's not what we're after today. And again, just like I said, this is not, I want to lose this edge here as well. And only have a definition. Yeah, I think what I'm doing is just a little bit restructuring this eye and closing off. And again, I'm gonna just soften this very much because I'm having a lot of definition there. So I can have, now you see it, now you see less of it. I can bring a little bit more color on the top of this as well. Just a tiny few little brush strokes of violet into the pink. And then quiet this down. And then maybe just allow a few little darknesses right here. Just like I was saying, to hold that highlight. Feels like I can do a little bit more light on the top here. Passing through. As I enter here, warm up and soften. Warm up and soften. So there. A little bit maybe more light in the corner. Yet a little bit warmer passage here, opening that up, still making this look coming around that plane left. I like that move. I'd like to bring a little bit of that color in here. And I'd like to bring a little bit of the warmer shadow, just indicating slightly the bold. Soften that edge and get more blue, more mysterious. Here, even bring a little bit of a light here and here. Just a slightly cooler light. Yeah, that's possible. Okay, not move it too much to the edge. Okay. And I still want to do less color less pink. Maybe a little bit more here of that cooler light, as well as right here of the cooler light between the planes. Maybe the same cooler light here, around coolness here coming in, and on the side plane with a little more, which will be, that's too much pink, coming to the more color here, just a tiny bit. Okay, and of course a cheekbone coming with more color here before this brighter, maybe yellowish highlight coming here. In setting up warm and cool, a bit more yellow into reflective light here. That's tiny bit too hard and too much, so just take it easy, kind of a pressing on the eye. I put a little bit more yellow, a warmer put a little bit of keep saying a little bit, no, that's too strong. Reflective light here with more yellow. Darken this slightly, give it a little more depth. A fold here. And so here we're coming to the end of the painting of the eye. And it is a good eye. However, there is a second part to this video where I completely repaint this eye by adding more color, more paint quality, and continue edge work, taking this to a different level of finish. I invite you to watch it or to paint along as you feel fit to your own abilities and level and desires. Thank you so much for watching the first part of it, and I hope you enjoy the second. And what I'd like to do is just keep softening some of the edges. Really create softer eye. And again, a lot of it is just kind of a feeling, nothing that is truly a known path, but always wanting to try something new and see what happens. So putting a little bit more yellow. So I guess what I'm gonna try to do is soften the edges and be a little bit more courageous about color using more color in the eye. So a little bit more of warmer colors on the edges here. And again, because it's dry and I don't need to worry about the wet paint, just makes it a little bit easier to put the paint on top. Bring a little bit of brightness here and then warm up that brightness with more yellow, settling in here. To me, when I do something like that, I'm thinking that I'm creating a history of the brushstroke, meaning adding more layers creates complexity that hard to achieve in one layer. So here I'm taking a little bit of a lighter yellow and pushing into the lower eyelid to allow this more opening, but I'm gonna be doing of the opposite, is pushing some pink on the edge of that eyeball to also allow the pink come in. So there is a double movement. The eye is leaking into the eyelid and the eyelid is leaking into the eye. There is a double exchange, and that's what will really soften that edge. Come with a little bit more light higher to open it up slightly, like a brighter eye. And then the same brightness I see is in this corner too. So I'm putting a little of pink next to this edge, just looking for a warmer pink, maybe with a little bit of yellow. And then the darker, maybe tiny bit more color. As this becomes more mysterious and goes to the corner. And then I'm gonna take ultramarine blue and I'm gonna just come to the edges of that iris and allow some of that blue, a few brush strokes into the white, also to soften the edge of that. I think that would nicely. Put blue next to highlight. Move a little bit down this way. Then mix transparent red oxide with phthalo blue as my darkest dark. And really accent it here next to highlight. Actually take my skewer and I'm gonna continue that highlight closer. And then again with the dark, stop that before. Okay. I'm gonna put of the brighter yellow right under the highlight. That maybe little touches of red as well, and then come with the skewer and come this way. I'm gonna take a highlight on the top of the eyelid, a little lemon yellow, a little alizarin, and I'm gonna move a little bit more diagonal. This, and then with more alizarin, I'm gonna just slowly allow this to come to lesser degree. Okay. See my brush moved with transparent red oxide and a little bit terra rosa. Gonna come with fold here. Put more color into the fold, and then put yellow ochre with some red. Put a little bit more color right next to the most protruded area of eyeball for the warmer color to come forward in the light, and at the same time maybe put a little bit more gray as the eye rounds off and moves to the side, and the same thing here. Just a few brush strokes of gray, warmer passage right here as this is down plane of this coming, yeah, and then maybe putting a little bit of gray, violet in this area to show the turn of that. So just almost, and then scratch it out so it's not too much, and then maybe come back with that gray and get a little bit more in here. But that was a little heavy-handed, so few brush strokes into the eyebrow. I think a little warmer color, that might be too bright. Just give a slight indication of that fold here, and then there is an openness here, and then there is a warmer fold here. finding the right value here. No, that's too heavy. And with a little more yellow coloration coming up here. Just can't look too light here because it is coming. I don't know if I need that fold, but since it is, so I just soften it a little bit more and brought this to just a little deeper shadow, that space. Put in more color, maybe a few brush strokes of green to just tie it around it. And I think I'm gonna spice this up by allowing a little more reflective light. And then the last thing I'd like to try is to totally allow this be washed out, this edge. Now when we have a strong color there, I think it's that outline that really can be And that's a last change that I'm gonna make. Any lines always have to disappear. Little turn here, and maybe just a little bit more continuation of that light there. Slight passages there. Definitely. Okay. And then okay. So I want to finish that way. And this is when I'm probably satisfied, and I'm gonna stop. I thank you very much for your patience with me. It seems like was a very easy small painting, but even a small painting takes time, and I think that's just something that we need to be aware of, that it's always a process of discovery, a process of learning, and it's worth investing your time into it. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again.